Today I visit with John Fennell out of Columbia, Missouri. I'm Rick J, and this is Spotlight on the Arts.
Rick J presents Spotlight on the Arts.
Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts, coming to you from the Lamey's Building here in Sedalia, Missouri. I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming a major artist in the area from Columbia, Missouri, John Fennell. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much.
On the
I'm
show.
delighted to be here.
Excellent. I know we been looking forward to this the interview since we met at the Dom Museum of Contemporary Arts.
Yes,
We were both dropping off paintings that night.
Exactly.
I got to meet you and finally meet Mr. John Fennell. I had heard your name throughout the communities, throughout the, shall we say, the entertainment, artist entertainment business for a while. And I got to meet your lovely wife. So it was a great night to really join at the reception there.
I would agree with you. It was a pleasant, very pleasant night.
Excellent. Well, I just can't wait for people to get to know John Fennell, if I may call you by your first name. Well, please tell us a little bit, and tell the people worldwide a little bit about John Fennell. Look at the camera and let them know.
Well, I like to call it a checkered past in some ways because my trajectory to being an artist has been a long one. I grew up in a family where art wasn't much appreciated, and so I was always drawing and coloring and those things, but I don't think my parents ever recognized that was an important endeavor. And so as I got into college, the art department in the university where I went to was always a magnet, but I pulled away from there because I thought, how would I going to make a living with this? So I wound up getting a degree, and I got my first job, and the immediate thing I did was started taking painting seriously, started taking art classes, and trying to, I guess, make good on those promises that I saw in myself as a painter, as an artist, and and I've not stopped painting since that time.
Well, John, you say you picked up some education through different universities. Can you name those?
Sure.
If someone might relate to this.
I did my undergraduate work at Northern Illinois University, and later on I wound up taking classes at the American Academy of Art in Chicago, which was right across the street from the Art Institute. I didn't go to the Art Institute for a couple of reasons. One of them was that at the time, the Art Institute was really doing mostly abstract work, abstract expressionism and things. There was very few figurative drawing, figurative painting, landscape painting going on at the Art Institute. And across the street was a smaller school, and I wanted to really learn how to draw. And so I spent 2 years there. I didn't need a degree, so I spent 2 years there really just drawing from the model, drawing all the time. And I'd also look out the window and I think, God, I really love that landscape. It was a city landscape, cityscape. And that really kind of drew my interest in many ways into the urban environment as a potential subject. I also met an artist. He was in his 70s at that time, named Gianni Silfoni. And I would go to school in the middle of the week, and then at weekends I would study painting with him and a few other people that I knew. We would go to his class, and he would bring us outside to do plein air painting. It was my first experience with plein air. And it was just a total revelation to me that you could go outside with paints and try to capture something that you that you saw, that you experienced in nature. And it stayed with me, and it still stays with me, because there's an enormous kind of inspiration that comes from being out in nature. It's not the only way I paint, but it is one of the ways I do paint.
Well, yes, your works really speak well for you, and we have a mixture. And we're going to talk more about, shall we say, the nitty-gritty of John's work in the second part after the break. But you'll be seeing a lot here on the mantle as we discuss different things. Now, you also, I mentioned your lovely wife, and would you like to say hi to her or any family?
Well, hello, Hilda, my muse. Hilda she is a very strong person, and she doesn't hesitate to tell me when my paintings are working or when they're not working. So she becomes kind of my first critic. In a way, she said, "And that one's really good, John. This one, not so good. It looks like it needs some work in this area or this area." She's learned the language of painting, and she's learned to. She has a really good eye for this, and so I really do depend upon her. When I'm in the middle of a painting, I have a problem or something, I will also send that to her. Send an image to her while I'm at the studio.
Yes, that's great. Now, you're an artist, but do you have do you have another job?
Well, as I learned very quickly when I was taking classes and painting on my own, it's hard to make a living, especially when you're starting out. I was a literature major in college, and I taught high school for a couple of years, but it wasn't, I never felt I left the classroom. I was on one side of the desk or the other side. And so I kind of directed my creative energies to being a journalist. And I did it the hard way. Didn't go to journalism school. I started in the field. I worked for a small newspaper in Benton Harbor, Michigan. I also worked for the City News Bureau, which was a wire service in Chicago. And there I met a famous columnist named Mike Royko. And Mike was the chief columnist for the Den, the Daily News, and he went on to the Sun-Times and then the Tribune. But he really taught me about reporting and about how important journalism was. And it was a career breaker for me because of him and what I learned with him. I went on to work for the daily newspaper until the paper folded, like all afternoon papers. And then I went into magazines. I felt like daily newspapering was too fast for me, that I wanted to think about the story and I wanted to craft my writing, and I was able to do that in magazines. One thing I did learn about magazines is that because I had this painting background, I was able to talk design to the designers of magazines.
Oh, I see.
And so it was a great kind of combination. I understood editing, and I understood writing, I understood reporting, but I also understood design. And so in journalism, oftentimes there's a friction between the art department and the writing department or the news
illustrators.
Department. And so I knew the good illustrators. I knew what design was. I knew how it worked. So we had a very cohesive grouping in my magazines, and they also became award-winning magazines because I had a good designer, I had great art, I had great reporters and writers working for me.
Yes.
I worked for a design magazine called Step by Step Graphics, which some of you may know. It focused on design and illustration.
I see.
And then I became editor of a city magazine in Milwaukee, and this magazine was all about the focus of the city. Who were the personalities? What were the politics of the city?
Sure.
What was the investigations that needed to be done to kind of bring things to light that weren't being to light by the newspapers there?
Something new.
Something new.
Different
New.
look.
We also did lifestyle journalism, so it was a combination. And the magazine became an award-winning magazine in a number of levels, both the design and for reporting. And that brought my work as a journalist to the attention of the Missouri School of Journalism.
Uh-huh.
And they asked me if I was an editor for 13 years at that magazine, and somebody from the university called me and said, "Would you be interested in interviewing for a job as a professor here?"
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, not in my wildest. I never thought I would be back teaching after my 2 years in high school."
Oh my, what an opportunity.
It was an opportunity, and even though it was a pay cut, and I had to move from Milwaukee at the time to Columbia,
Missouri.
I was reluctant, but eventually it turned out to be a very good decision.
Now that's associated with Missouri University.
Yes, University of Missouri in Columbia, and it's, they use a separate language for it, Missouri School of Journalism. It's been around since 1908. It was the first journalism school in the world. Journalism education didn't exist before that time.
I didn't realize that.
But by the way, I was painting this whole time as I was doing
yes,
it. Painting on weekends, painting on vacations, whenever I could.
I've got to ask you, what really inspired you then to become an artist?
I think it's something inborn, honestly. I'm not sure. I think what happens is that you have to make a decision to take any kind of creative spark that you have.
Yes.
You can either ignore it, or you can say, I think I need to do this. I think I need to try to experiment with it to see what kind of talents I might have. And so I did. As I said, I learned some plein air painting with Gianni Silfoni. I took a long trip. I also met an artist named Milford Zorns, who was part of what's known as the California School of Watercolor. And I was just driving to California to visit one of my friends, and I got tired and very tired, and I pulled over to a motel in it was Mount Carmel, Utah. And I thought I was going to fall instantly asleep because I was so tired from driving. But I was wide awake, totally wide awake. And I thought, I went to the clerk at the motel. I said, "Is there anybody here interesting or anything I should be doing in town?" He said, "Well, you know, there's an artist that lives next door." Meanwhile, I had my paints in my car, and I knocked on his door, and he welcomed me in, and it was a wonderful experience. And he said, "On your way back, I'm going to have a workshop." He said, "You can work around my area here, around my studio, cutting grass, doing things, and I'll put you as a student in the workshop." And so it really gave me an experience of how a professional artist like him, he was known nationally for his work, and he was still a brilliant, he was a brilliant watercolorist whose work focuses on design, but of course the purity of watercolor.
Sure, sure. Oh, that's great. Hats off to him and praise. Thank goodness you. Sometimes those things come to us, we don't know when they're going to come.
It was a
blessing.
gift. It was a gift from the gods for me.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. My way of trying to say it. Well, that is great. Now, is he still
No, he died a number of years ago.
Oh, I see.
But he was in his late 90s.
Oh,
when he
that
died.
is excellent. Well, what continues then? I have to ask you, what continues you to? We all talk about it somewhat in our DNA.
I think that art is born into us, if not as a painter or anything else that's creative, but it's also in us as viewers. We need art.
Yes.
We need art to reflect our experience, and I think your example brings that back to forever, forever recorded time, that there's something about recording our experiences, recording the nature around us for posterity, for our own tribes, if you will, for our friends, for our communities, for our culture. I have to say, is that why I do it? I'm not sure, but mostly I do it for me.
That's self-driven.
Right, it has to be self-driven.
It's something to complete us.
I go back to that thought of, if you feel a spark in yourself for something, to do something, you owe it to yourself to explore it a little bit, to see whether it's really there or not. And when I started exploring it, I only wanted to do it more. I only wanted to paint more. I only wanted to get better. I only wanted to learn more. I wanted to see the world through painting. I wanted to experience the world and show the world through painting.
Well, you spoke of being a professor of the University of Missouri in Columbia. What has that done really to affect your 35 years as an artist, or 35 years plus?
That's really good. That's a really good thought. I taught magazine writing, magazine publishing, and magazine desigin.
And would that be an illustration also?
Well,
I hear
not so much illustration. Not so
illustrating.
much illustration, but
Okay.
really it was all about how to put a magazine together and the kind of writing that should be in a magazine, the kind of how it should be published, and what it should look like.
And
what is the art in the magazine? Is it photography? Is it graphic design? Is it illustration? How do those work with the writing that's being done and the reporting being done? So
to reach those people.
Exactly.
Your market.
So this combination of both when you're in a magazine, it's a combination of looking at the visual that you open up a feature with and then reading the story. They need to coalesce.
Right.
They need to be able to talk to one another and speak to the reader who's looking at both and seeing both.
So you can't have one without the other in a magazine.
Certainly you can't.
Yes.
No, in my mind you can't.
Yes,
because
I can see that.
they act as partners in trying to communicate.
Yes, good point, good point. Well, Jewel, before time gets away from us, give us your contact information. Now, you've been really fortunate recently in a Art in the Park in
Art in the
Columbia,
Park, yes.
Missouri. You was fortunate to gain some, shall we say, some recognition and sales.
Yes, I did actually. It was very nice. You know, I sold a number of paintings at that exhibit, and I was really happy for it. I was also named by the Missouri Arts Council as one of 4 June Artists of the Month.
Oh,
so
excellent.
they did a press release on it, and then they started posting various times throughout the month images of my work and a little bit about my profile. So it was really nice.
So if someone, do you do commissions?
I do commissions,
How does someone
actually.
get a hold of you? I have a beautiful website. Is that the key?
Yes,
to reaching
well, the website is really helpful for getting people to, mostly the people who have already seen me or know my art, they go to my art to be able to go deeper into my art.
Yes.
And some people discover it, like, you know, sometimes
Yes.
internationally people discover my art that they really didn't
Yes,
know.
now we're international, so that's why we're here. So how's my friends in China and our viewers in Brazil or Spain, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can get a hold of me at johnfennellart.com.
Excellent.
So it's John, JOHN, FENNELL.com.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, thank you. Well, it's time for that break, so please relax and be comfortable while we take a look at these special messages. Sure. After the break, John will fill us in on his favorite mediums he likes to work with a discussion on how he brings artwork together, how the ideas come to him, those favorite pieces, and more. The intersection, as we talked earlier about, the intersection between landscapes and abstracts, John wants to talk about. So stay with us. There's a lot more here on Spotlight on the Arts.
This facility doesn't look anything like it did when I first saw it. My very first job was right here making Levi's for the J.A. Lamey Manufacturing Company. The people who I worked for were great. It was hard work and it was brutal, but the family that owned the building were fair and honest, and they were great to work for. I worked here 7 years. My father worked here 21 years and my mother 10 years. And it was just a great place. I've never regretted it. I started out in the shipping department, and I graduated up into the cutting room and worked there spreading cloth for most of that period of time. Well, absolutely, Ginger Swearingen would have been the individual who I remember most. She was involved strongly with my acting opportunities, and she was director and producer, and she was fun to work for as well. I've known the whole family for quite a number of years, staff and John and Ginger and Woody, and they were all customers in our business, and they've just done a beautiful job with this. It's just beautiful, and the people that I talk to who have been customers here and visitors have all enjoyed it a great deal. Everyone talks about the quality of the food, and it's just a very entertaining place, and I'm looking forward to it.
Creative, connection, control. Support the arts and be the change. 24 hours a day, 200 countries. The show must go on. Introducing the world's first exclusive platform for artists and creators of all kinds. The biggest stage on earth. Phantom.com.